Well, I'm excited that we'll be having District Attorney Larry Krasner on our show next week. And it's interesting because well, I was watching Sundance Film Festival was happening over the past several days, last weekend and into the middle of this week. And there is a documentary that was premiered there that is a documentary series about the first 2 years of DA Krasner's administration. And it's kind of a behind the scenes look at all that was taking place as he has tried to take a radical agenda into the district attorney's office, which had been a bastion of, which was a big part of the mass incarceration machine in the state of Pennsylvania and in the city of Philadelphia and county of Philadelphia for the past 30 years, and what it looks like to go into an institution like that and try to do major reforms. And so there's a lot of behind the scenes, footage of like meetings happening with new administration people coming in and trying to talk to the current people running different departments. And it also follows a lot of the blowback from the FOP to his administration. But it also follows different people, activists who are working to end cash bail, a police officer who is policing the community that he grew up in, and what's his reaction to these changes. And, it's an 8-part series that's going to be coming out on PBS, on our local PBS station. I believe it's going to be available through streaming service through WHYY in April 20th. And then it'll be broadcast in the fall. I think it's being broadcast around the country in April, but here, because DA Krasner is up for, in the primary election in May, they wanted to not have undue influence on that election by broadcasting it, but I believe it will be available through streaming. But it was really an interesting inside look into what it's been like inside that office trying to make change. So I'll be interested to talk to him about that next week when he's on. And, of course, after I saw that on what I think it was Tuesday night, then I saw the big op-ed in the New York Times that was posing a critique of progressive district attorneys around the country and them not doing enough. Did you see that article?
I did, and I was really wondering. I mean, I know because of the DA race coming up, and actually a friend of mine who works for a DA's office in another state, we were talking about that. So I'm really curious to hear what you're thinking about that. And is it valid? Are some of the points valid? I mean, I'm not sure I agree with everything.
I mean, I think the main criticism from people who are, the activists and, the person who penned the article, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name right now. I'll look it up and I'll make sure that I announce it. But he's one of the, I think he's the director of the Philly Community Bail Fund.
Yeah,
anyway, he penned the article, and, I think the criticism he's saying is that despite claims of moves to end the cash bail system, that the DA's office in Philadelphia and also in places around the country actually haven't done enough to bring the cash bail system to an end. The bail funds in Philadelphia, they have data based on the people that they get out of jail, and they're raising money to basically pay people's bails. Who can't afford to pay their own bail, as little as $120 or maybe even less. Sometimes people can't afford to pay, and then they'll sit locked up for weeks or months, lose jobs, lose access to their children sometimes, get evicted sometimes because they're just sitting in jail because they're too poor to pay their bail. So, but they track the people who they're bailing out and understand the circumstances of those cases, and they say that based on their data, not enough is being done. And of course, DA Krasner would say that based on the data that they're tracking inside his office, they are doing a lot. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation. We can ask District Attorney Krasner about that next week. But, you know, I think that the film that I saw raises the larger question of, like, what does it mean to try to bring very big reform inside an institution? You know,
Sure.
It's how do you bridge you know, the demands of activists and the grassroots level, who, you know, many of us are calling for abolition of the current system, right? That we need more restorative justice. We need alternatives. And, you know, I think there's gradations of that. Some people will say, well, we still need some prisons, right? Because there's people who are a danger to themselves and others. But how do you take grassroots demands inside an institution like the district attorney's office? I think it's similar questions are asked of, you know, revolutionaries who may overthrow colonial rule, right? But then they get into office and they have to govern, right? And it's a very it's a very different set of things going on that you have to contend with. So I think that's the interesting question. And I think as those of us who believe in, you know, social change, political change, economic change, we make, you know, very, very deep demands for change, dramatic change. How do we actually translate that into policy and changes in policy and practice? So it's an ongoing question.
So Malik Neal is the Philadelphia Bail Fund executive director, and the piece was in the New York Times. It was an op-ed in the New York Times. And let me just say, as somebody that's been on the other side of the electoral fence, right, you know, it's really easy to have high ideas on one side, and you get to the other side, and you just understand the morass of the convoluted policies and ways that things operate that can really just grind you and frustrate you to no end. I think, you know, part of the challenge that we have is that these systems and institutions that we have been built this way over centuries. I mean, we're not even talking about this being built in the last 10, 15, 20 years, but built over centuries. And so their structures are entrenched in a certain mindset and a certain way of being. And now, you know, we have to understand that it is not always going to change in 4 years. You know, it's actually interesting. Conservatives, when they think about change, think about it in the construct of 40 years. And progressives always think about everything in the change of like a year or less. And I think that we need to think about that shifts happen generationally, and they take a long time to move because you got to root out all of the stuff, all of the policies, all of the discriminatory practices and everything that are rooted in those policies and the worldview. And can you imagine taking over a staff of hundreds of people, some of whom you just can't fire outright, who, you know, have a certain worldview about how they do their jobs? You can't manage, you know, it's hard managing down to the most minute person to be able to get them to change their thinking or how they're going about doing things. It just takes time to do that. So, I mean, not to say that we don't hold our political leaders accountable. I think we do. I think we have to hold D.A. Krasner accountable, and we can expect him to do more. But at the same time, I'm just really curious, from the 7 people that ran for DA several years ago, would any of them have gotten us to the place that we are right now? And, you know, is it possible that we're thinking that there are others out there that can get us to this place? I don't know. I haven't seen them, those folk out there that would be able to do that. You know, when you're in the thick of it and you're fighting battles internally and fighting them externally at the same time, it just makes it sometimes very difficult to do your job. Not that I'm trying to be an apologist for Larry Krasner. That's not really my goal. But I just, as a person who has served as a politician on the other side of the fence, once you get over there and you just realize how much nonsense and bureaucracy is caught up in trying to govern and do your job, it can be frustrating to no end because you just can't change it overnight.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think I'll be curious to hear what D.A. Krasner has to say next week when he's on. But, you know, what is the standard that we need to have in terms of really undoing the way that this system targets people who are poor, right? I mean, the whole
Right.
cash bail issue is about punishing people who are in poverty. That's what it's about. It's not that these people are somehow more naturally bad or criminal, prone to criminality. It's that, and that's why they're stuck in jail. They're stuck in jail waiting trial because they don't have the money to get out. That's
Right.
the bottom line. And so, what should we expect in terms of an adequate standard, especially in a time of COVID, right, where we should be
Right.
trying to get as many people out of prison as possible, because prisons are some of the least safe places for people to be, right, during a pandemic. Close quarters, overcrowded, exactly goes directly against what the CDC is recommending in terms of how we keep ourselves safe in this COVID time. So, what is the standard that we need to be holding ourselves to as a society, as a city, and holding DA Krasner to as the district attorney in order to do right by, people who have been victimized by this system of mass incarceration for far too long, and whose lives are ruined, whose lives are really, it's yet another major strike against them if they're sitting in jail, losing their house because they're not paying rent, losing access to their children because they're separated from them, etc. So, it's always a struggle and a negotiation, and so I'll be really excited to talk to him about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other piece of that too, though, right, is it's not just the DA prosecuting the cases; it's also the preponderance of the Philadelphia police force that over arrest and go after a folk of color in the city. And I think that that's a part of this cycle, right, that we have to address, where white folk might get let go, young white folk might get let go, as sowing their oats or whatever. Black and brown children are arrested, charged as adults, and really challenged, to contend with a system that doesn't intend them any good from the very beginning. And it doesn't start at the DA's office. It actually starts in the police department. And so I think we have to really wrestle with that as well. It's the police, it's the district attorney, it's the judiciary that form this tripart system of criminal justice or criminal injustice, we could call it, in our country. And so it's not just holding the DA accountable. We have to hold the judiciary and the police department accountable for their actions, their training, and their expectations. And I think one of the pieces that we have to talk about in this as well is the judicial races that are coming along with this, and how are we holding these judges accountable for having a progressive understanding of what it means to do criminal justice reform in the city of Philadelphia as well, not just the district attorney. We have to hold those candidates accountable to that too. Exactly.
And how many people who are listening right now, who are super voters, who vote during all primaries and, off-season elections, know in depth who your candidates for the different judgeships are? Do you know who the judicial candidates really are and what they really stand for? And, there's a lot less information about judicial candidates than there is about, candidates for city council, candidates for mayor, president, governor, et cetera. So I think that, we have to do more work to educate the public about who these candidates are, what they stand for. Do they stand for racial equity and justice? Do they stand for reform of the system? All of those kinds of things. So I look forward to the extent we can, doing some education about what we should be looking for, what should the standard be that these candidates we're holding them to in terms of the kind of system we want to see in the future. So anyway, I know we're up on our break. So let us go to our break. And then on the other side of this break, we will be speaking with State Rep Chris Rabb about the education funding issue in the state of Pennsylvania. You're listening to Solutions. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio. Watch for an accident on 295. It's on the southbound side of the 42 freeway, off to the side of the road. Delay goes back to 30. Meanwhile, crash cleared out of the way, 95 southbound at actually between 452 and Chichester Avenue. Crash is gone, but delay still with us, back to 476. 95 northbound, meantime, backs up Betsy Ross Bridge to Bridge Street. Blue Ridge southbound slows down, McGate Boulevard to 95. We've got some delays on the Schuylkill Expressway. On the eastbound side, heavy 476 to Belmont Avenue. Then again from Montgomery Drive on out to University Avenue. Westbound side jams Boulevard to Belmont, and the Vine backs up eastbound Schuylkill to 95. Report brought to you by Wendy's. New to the Wendy's 2 for $5 lineup is their classic chicken sandwich. So go grab a 2 for $5 deal and pick 2 faves like a Dave's Single, spicy chicken sandwich, nugs, and now the classic chicken sandwich. 2 for just $5. Price and participation may vary. Limited time only. And for more traffic information, just log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
This Black Artist Story vignette is brought to you by Commonwealth Charter Academy.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of Academy Award-winning production designer Hannah Beachler. Hannah Beachler is an American production designer. Madam Beachler grew up in Centerville, Ohio, and graduated from the University of Cincinnati, where she studied fashion design. Then she attended Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, where she studied film. Her first major collab was with the celebrated director Ryan Coogler on 2013's Fruitvale Station. Coogler later hired her to work as his production designer on Creed, and then later on, Black Panther. Hannah's set design work can also be seen in the Miles Davis biopic Miles Ahead and for the film Moonlight. While we could say her coup de production gras was her Afrofuturist design direction swag in Black Panther, let us all bow down and agree that her design work for Beyoncé's 2016 TV special and visual album Lemonade is the visual holy grail. Of course, now she's an Academy Award winner and the first African-American woman to be nominated or to win an Oscar for Best Production Design. Okay? We honor the art and artistry of star cousin Hannah Beachler. So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune into The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
This Black Artist Story vignette was brought to you by Commonwealth Charter Academy. The gold standard and market leader in public K-12 cyber education is proud to celebrate and recognize Black History Month. Visit ccaeducate.me to learn more.
Hi, WURD family. Beginning Monday, February 1st, Wake Up with WURD's Solomon Jones will be hosting the Big Game Trivia Contest, brought to you by Brown's Family ShopRite and the Family Business Collaborative partners Amoroso's Bakery, Dietz & Watson, and Hers Snacks. Winners of the Big Game Trivia Contest will receive a $20 gift card from Brown's Family ShopRite. Tune in February 1st and let the winnings begin.
You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
We are moving towards full and fair funding of public education. This could not be stated strongly enough. And I got to say, I'm really proud to live in a state that has a constitution that guarantees or seeks to have a mandate that provides for a thorough and efficient system of public education. Not all states have that. Our U.S. Constitution doesn't have that. And that's very important. And from a personal perspective, I'm the grandson of a boy who was raised in Jim Crow, Mississippi, who loved to learn, but was denied an education through public schools after the 10th grade because he was black. And his grandfather before him was denied the opportunity, the right, to read or write because he was born into slavery because of state lawmakers in that state. That is shameful. But you know what also is shameful? That despite our constitutional mandate in our Commonwealth, we still live in educational apartheid in Pennsylvania, where the disparities are significant. So significant that the single most influential factor to determine if a public school student gets the most money is whiteness. This is not South Africa. And yet, I repeat, the single most influential factor to determine if a student is going to get the fullest amount of money the state provides is whiteness. The governor doesn't stand for this. I don't stand for this. Pennsylvania families deserve equal access to a quality education. And the governor, despite this bold move, you need help in the legislature. You can't do it alone. We have a co-equal branch of government in our Pennsylvania General Assembly, and it is our moral imperative to do right by all students, by all parents, teachers, administrators, so forth, irrespective of the bodies they inhabit and the zip codes in which they were born. This is what we must do, and we must move forward towards educational justice.
That was State Rep Chris Rabb of the 200th Legislative District at a press conference yesterday with Governor Tom Wolf. Earlier this week, on Wednesday, Governor Tom Wolf announced that he was going to push for a $1.3 billion increase in state education funding, and that he intended to run all $10.3 billion, I think it's somewhere around $10.3 billion of the state education funding through the full and fair funding formula that was passed some years ago by the General Assembly and Legislature to be able to make sure that children of color are able to receive the full funding that's necessary for their school districts to have resourcing and to be able to provide them a thorough and efficient education. We're joined now by State Rep Chris Rabb, who you just heard give that powerful speech calling out education apartheid here in the state of Pennsylvania. This is an issue that Power has worked on very closely and in partnership with Rep Rabb. And so, Rep Rabb, thank you for being here today, and would love to get your thoughts and feedback as you listen to that again, those words, and your thoughts on where the governor's going at this moment.
Thank you so much. Always glad to be back. That was the first time I heard myself. It's always hard to listen to myself. But I'm glad I was given the opportunity to stand with the governor on this very bold proposal. It is very bold. It would increase funding to our schools by 20%. It could be the biggest proposed infusion into our school system ever. It's $1.3 billion, not $10.3, which I would prefer, but we got to find the funding source to get to $10 billion. 1.3 would be raised from increasing the personal income tax just incrementally. But before folks get mad about getting taxed, 40% of Pennsylvania taxpayers would receive a tax cut. 27% would pay the same amount they currently pay, and about a third of all Pennsylvanians would pay a little bit more than what they're paying now. And that's, based on income. So if you're not in the highest income bracket, you don't have anything to worry about. But we all benefit from this type of tax increase because we're talking about probably the most important investment that society can make in the next generation, which is education in our young people. And it's a smart move. It's a bold move. It's going to get tremendous pushback from Republicans who are not invested in investing in black and brown students. But for those Republicans who represent school districts that are deeply underfunded and inequitably funded, those Republicans are on my bill. And this is a bill that was that I introduced explicitly and passionately at the behest of Power Interfaith. So I want to give some love to Power Interfaith for entrusting this legislation to me as one of its chief advocates. Because without Power and the groundwork they've done for years, we wouldn't have come this far. So, and Bishop, I don't know how many different hats you can wear in one hour, but I want to give you some love as the new executive director because your fingerprints are on this momentum too.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. This is a big deal. So, were you the only legislator that spoke at the press conference?
Yes. The governor asked for me by name because what folks need to understand is the bill that I introduced is a bill that provides for immediate 100% fair funding. So what folks need to understand is whatever education dollars that come from your state taxes are distributed in a very inequitable way right now. It's basically based on student count from 1992 levels. It should be based on need. If it's based on need and a fairly complex formula to determine what fairness looks like, then that means that poor school districts like Philadelphia and other places in rural Pennsylvania and beyond will finally get their fair share. We're not getting that right now. And so that's the bill I introduced. It has a number of Democrats and Republicans who are supportive of it as co-sponsors. So because I'm the sole sponsor of the bill, I was asked to speak because what he has done in this proposal is essentially provide for 100% fair funding of our schools while also increasing the size of the pie. So my initial bill cuts up a small pie into fair pieces, into appropriate, equitable pieces based on the needs of the 500 different school districts. What his proposal does is expand the size of the pie as well. So it will become both full and fair funding, which is something that we have not seen really ever.
Let me ask about that because I think, some of the challenge in terms of moving this forward previously was the fact that the wealthier, whiter school districts were concerned that they would be losing money with a fair funding formula, right? That somehow to even the playing field and actually distribute resources equitably, that you would have to pull money from wealthier, whiter school districts. But it sounds like this is now expanding the pie so that would not have to happen.
That is correct. So there's one sum of money, the much larger sum of money, that's being funneled through the fair funding formula. So those inequitably funded districts like the Philadelphia School District can finally get its fair share, but there's also a separate bucket of money that would it's a term that it's very legally, it doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface, but it's called hold harmless, which basically means that no school district will get any less than what they got in the fiscal year of 2015. So even if your school district got more than its fair share, you will never get less money. The problem with that is if we don't grow the size of the pie, the wealthier, whiter districts will continue to get more than their fair share, irrespective of how much new money comes to school districts like Philly or, Allentown or York or Reading or Pottstown. All of these underfunded and inequitably funded school districts will continue to suffer from the effects of educational apartheid because the hold harmless standard advantages those school districts that already get more money than they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of a way of doing both, right? It's basically saying to folks who already get more than their fair share, you're not going to bring home any less money to your school district, and also significantly increasing the investment to those school districts who need it most. So it is a wise approach that is going to get a lot of pushback because, let's face it, Republicans don't believe even in taxing the richest people who do the best during the pandemic. So you probably, have talked about, read about all these super billionaires and millionaires who are making more money during the pandemic than before the pandemic. They're paying less in taxes than folks who are struggling. And the governor seeks to provide for a fair way of taxing Pennsylvanians. And if you're a working family, you should get a tax cut. You will get that through this. But if you're doing rather well, then you should, and you believe in your own country and all the things that allow you to get your high income and create wealth for you and your family, then you should be proud to pay a little bit more in taxes so that every child has access to a high-quality 21st century education. To do so is nothing less than selfish and, frankly, unpatriotic.
So, Rep, what's the pathway forward here now? So I'm assuming you're going to have to reintroduce legislation for this in the General Assembly, and then what?
So, absolutely. I'll be reintroducing a bill that essentially complements what is in the proposal by the governor. But what folks need to understand is whatever bill numbers assigned to my legislation, there's going to be other legislation that perhaps Republicans put up that's going to be similar. In fact, I have a colleague in Montgomery County who plagiarized my bill. He literally copied and pasted, you know, like Word document, not WURD, but WORD, literally copied and pasted my bill and introduced it as his own. You would think that that would be illegal or considered unethical or would be censured for it, but it happens all the time. I guess I should be flattered. So there's going to be a bunch of different legislation that arrives kind of at the same destination, but it doesn't have to have my name on it. It doesn't have to be my bill number. They can take the appropriate content from my bill and stick it in another bill or put it in an amendment to an unrelated piece of legislation. And if it gets 102 votes on the House side and 26 on the Senate side, it'll go to the governor, and the governor will sign it. So there are many different pathways to what we discussed thus far. It's just going to be a very ugly and circuitous route to educational justice. And it's entirely possible that it does not happen this year. The governor has 2 more years before he's termed out. He could do the same thing next year, and depending on what people do during election cycles and who's in the majority will determine how quickly this happens. Because, look, for the past 30-odd years, Republicans, right-wing Republicans, have controlled both the House and the Senate in our state. And most of them do not believe in educational justice. So we don't have the votes. And until we have the votes, this is going to be an uphill battle. But look, just like any other social justice movement that has been successful, it's taken time. If we said we're not going to work on civil rights issues unless we can turn it around in an election cycle, we'd still be in shackles. These things take generations. I don't think it'll take a generation, but it will require your listeners to be persistent and demand that their legislators and that those folks who are not on the right side of history to do the right thing. And it takes mass mobilization and organizing to do it. All the most important things we've gotten as black folks have come almost always through nonviolent direct action and protest. It's not for everybody, but there's nothing that we've achieved that did not require protest and something I like to call co-governance at the heart of any success. At the tip of the spear, it's never just elected officials. It's always young folks, BIPOC folks, women who are doing this work so that we can finally get to a point where we can enact these measures into law.
That's awesome. Hey, Rep, we're up on a break, but we want to continue the conversation with you about education because we need to talk about Philly for a little bit, too. So could you hang on for a couple minutes with us?
Absolutely.
All right. You're listening to Solutions on Word with Amadi Braxton, Dwayne Royster, and special guest, State Rep Chris Rabb. We'll be right back after these messages.
As a business owner, hiring and developing people from the community that your company serves is one of the best ways to show commitment to that community. Let WURD Radio help with Livelihood, our new initiative that connects Philadelphians with companies like yours. We'll feature your business, open employment opportunities, and resources to connect your company with talent and ensure that you reach your target demographic. To learn more about how Livelihood can help you build your team, visit wordworks.com. That's WURD works.com. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Celebrate Black History Month at the virtual 29th Annual African American Children's Book Fair on Saturday, February 6th, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. To register, go to the African American Children's Book Project.org. The free event will feature authors and illustrators bringing the pages of their books to life with panels and readings. For more information, call 215-878-BOOK. Remember, a book opens up a world of opportunities.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions on WURD. This is Amadi, your host, along with Bishop Dwayne Royster, your other host, and we are still on the line with Chris Rabb, State Rep of the 200th Legislative District, and we've been talking about the major announcement by Governor Wolf to move forward with a proposed plan for full and equitable funding, full and fair funding in the state of Pennsylvania.
So, Rep. Rabb, I think there's going to be a lot of work to be done in the days ahead, but at the moment, we also have this challenge around COVID and education in Philadelphia. Earlier today, Jerry Jordan announced that he was encouraging his teachers not to go back into the classroom on Monday. And I'm just wondering where, our state legislators are at this on right now, and in terms of, giving support to the children in this particular moment.
Really important issue, and in fact, just a couple hours ago, I added my name to an open letter published by a number of members of City Council, including Council Member Brooks, Gautier, and Gim, encouraging the school district not to reopen so soon and to develop a comprehensive plan to make sure that everyone is safe. I know it's difficult for families. Particularly, folks who are holding down multiple jobs, and this is a really difficult time, but it's not so difficult where we want to unduly endanger the lives of students, teachers, administrators. We got to do it right. And, I don't know how popular my view is, but it's what I believe, and I had to add my name because I just don't want to support things just because it's popular or because that's where the momentum's going. I want to do it because I believe it's the right thing to do. And I believe in public health, right? We have a new administration on the federal level that believes in science and public health. We have to do what's wise and listen to all those folks who've spent their lives trying to, promote these things about what the science says around this. And if we're making decisions that's not based on the science, that's not making sure that our kids are protected, then I have a real problem with that. And, I imagine there's more people who are going to be signing on to this letter or any other kind of public affirmation for our teachers who are, working so creatively under such daunting circumstances to educate our children. But we got to do it right. So if we're going to reopen, we need to do it based on the science to protect everyone because, that moves us from essential workers to sacrificial workers. And that's a real problem, particularly as it relates to even how folks are paid, right? There's the things that we care about most in this pandemic. We want to make sure we have our toilet paper, we have our groceries, we have our medications, and we think about all that invisible sector of the workforce of people who may be undocumented, folks who do not have a lot of formal education, folks who can't call in sick. These are folks who are earning a poverty wage in the richest country in world history, and during a pandemic where I mentioned before, we have the richest people already getting richer than they ever could have imagined amidst the coronavirus. Where's the respect for these essential workers? And that includes teachers.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually very helpful. Let me just, we're going to have Nichols Solomon on in a little bit, who is the head of the School Advisory Commission at Powell School. She's also the co-chair of the Power Education Team for Philadelphia, to come and talk a little bit more about this in a minute. So I want to ask you another question about something. So if I remember reading correctly, the state legislature passed a bill for COVID relief for Pennsylvania yesterday, I believe. And I'm wondering if you have any insight on how that will be spent and how it's really going to impact folk in Philadelphia.
So it was actually passed this morning.
This morning, okay.
It came up for what's called second consideration in case there are any amendments added to it. And there was an amendment so that it could receive bipartisan support. In fact, it was supported unanimously, which is very rare. So that meant that there had to be a lot of negotiation. But essentially, we're getting federal money given to the state to distribute as appropriate. And so that means that, the things that Republicans want is in there, and things that Democrats want are in there. I'm happy to share more information about specifically what that looks like. I know you like sharing as much information with your listeners and viewers, so I'm happy to do that. I'm driving, so I can't do that now, so I can't get into the details, but I can say that it's a significant amount of money that's coming through the state legislature to our municipalities in different ways, so that when we get the vaccine, right, because we have a shortage right now of vaccine, that when we get that new supply, we can begin to distribute it in a more equitable and timely fashion. We've been in the news yet again, Philadelphia, for some aggressive raggediness around outsourcing, COVID testing and vaccinating by a group of young white folks with no background in medicine, in professional, have no medical professional background, nothing around public health, and they got caught up there because of privilege, right? Because of whiteness, basically. This would have happened if it was a group of black folk with no background in this stuff. And so people are reeling, saying, why is it that a disproportionate amount of white folk are getting vaccinated when we know statistically that black folk are the ones who are being hospitalized and dying at a greater rate to coronavirus? This is a deep concern that my colleagues in the Philadelphia delegation, most of whom are black and represent majority black districts, are deeply concerned about and invested in figuring out. And I gotta say, I'm not pleased with what's happened on the state level, and I'm not pleased with the Kenney administration and Dr. Farley. I am deeply displeased. And when we've asked him about what is the lens through which you look at equity and meaningful distribution and using community stakeholders like the Consortium of Black Doctors, his responses have been consistently underwhelming. Underwhelming. And we're going to keep pushing back until we get the answers we need while we await a new supply of vaccine.
Yeah, I have to say, Commissioner Farley's responses to any questions I've seen, he has been so nonchalant about it that it's just really disheartening. I'm like, why are you a leader? Who put you in charge?
Listen, that's I know it's a rhetorical question, but it's also a real question, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at folks who are put in these positions, right, who have good resumes, but seem to be getting away with things that if black folk were in that same position, they'd be put under the prison. Like it talks about the inherent problem with the social of whiteness, because it's whiteness that insulates folks from the type of transparency and accountability everyone needs to be under, right? We should all have the same threshold for accountability, but somehow, if you're white, you get a pass. We don't have second chances if we're black and elected or appointed or in other positions. We're railroaded, and we got to have this conversation about white racism and structural inequality as it relates to addressing this pandemic, addressing community safety, policing, health care, public education, all these things, because we're just going to be symptom chasing and not actually dealing with the systems of oppression that address this, that allow for people in positions of power who are overwhelmingly or disproportionately white to get away with stuff that is unconscionable. Mm-hmm. And I'm really at my wit's end. I really am. And today is a special day because today was the day where the Black Caucus supported a concurrent resolution to create Emancipation Day in Pennsylvania, where we acknowledged that on February 3rd, 151 years ago, our state ratified the 13th Amendment abolishing legal slavery. And we're still dealing with the effects of slavery today. All of this is symptomatic of white supremacy and systemic racism. And until we have these conversations, we're not going to move forward. They're difficult conversations. People think that they are distractions or unduly divisive. But you know what's divisive? Having people die when they don't need to die from coronavirus because people don't understand the racial implications about the policies that are put forth. And that's what we have to do. And that requires all elected officials, all appointed officials, and all community stakeholders to call a spade a spade. And it's not going to make you popular, but if that's why you were running or accepted an appointed position, then you don't need to be in that position.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that rant.
It was a rant, I admit it.
We welcome that here. We welcome that.
Okay, well, y'all are my political therapy, so I thank you.
All right. Well, Rep. Rabb, we're going to probably go ahead and let you go a little bit early this time because we actually, because of technical challenges, we got another caller coming in a little bit. But we really appreciate you joining here with us today. And we actually want to continue to follow this piece as it moves through, especially around the state funding, to follow it as it moves through legislation over the next couple of months, and to find ways that our listeners can actually participate in helping to make sure that Philadelphia School District gets all the resources that it's due under the state constitution's notion of having a thorough and efficient education.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm happy to be back on and let folks know how they can help because we, all hands on deck. Every stakeholder, whether you got a GED or a PhD, you have a role to play, and we need your help. So happy to do whatever I can.
Great. Appreciate you. That's State Rep Chris Rabb of the 200th Legislative District that's been joining us today, and we deeply appreciate everything that you have been doing on this issue and fighting so many years for it. So appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Blessings to you. So, wow, a lot happening there, and a lot that we need to really look at and address in terms of education. I mean, there are two challenges, right? One, what's happening in Philadelphia at this moment about kids coming back. I don't know if you saw the article this week, but they had the little window fans that they were going to put in to circulate air in the classrooms across Philadelphia, and I think there was a big outcry about that. And really just asking ourselves the question, are our schools safe for our kids? And are we actually able to support our children at this moment and be able to provide a quality education for them?
Well, I mean, there's many school buildings that haven't been safe for quite a while, pre-COVID, right? We've had the problem with asbestos. We've had, schools that don't have heat in the winter, schools that don't have airflow in the summer. I mean, have our schools been safe pre-COVID? And I think there is lack of trust that the system is going to deliver in a pandemic level crisis in terms of safety. And of course, part of it is related to money. And I mean, this is also connected to, the fact that the Biden administration is putting forth this $1.9 trillion bill that does have significant amount of money for education and how to get schools reopened safely with a set of standards for health and safety that, you know, is the first time we're having guidance in you know, however long it's been going on, 11 months for this pandemic, that there hasn't been any federal guidance that is uplifting, you know, high safety standards. So there's going to be money coming in also from that. I mean, that was on my mind as we were talking to State Rep Chris Rabb to help schools reopen in a safe way, because we all want that. I mean, we all want that. I think teachers would be much happier being in classrooms with their students. We know the students would likely be much happier interacting with their classmates and having, you know, social time in addition to having live in-person connection with their educators and you know, getting out of the house. And particularly for those students who are maybe living in abusive situations at home or unhealthy situations at home. Sometimes school is the only safe space or the only escape from that. So we all want that to happen. Parents want it to happen so that they can, you know, work effectively and more efficiently. You know, many those who are working from home will be able to do that more easily when they don't have to make sure their kids are able to access online education and help them through that. And for those who have to go to work while their kids are at home learning, this gives them a place for them to know that their children are going to be safe in a school. So everybody wants that, but we have to do it safely, and we have to respect the professionals who are working inside the schools along with the students, that their health matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest piece. I mean, you know, you and I have been talking about what's happened with COVID over the last year, almost the last year, right? Because it was about this time last year that we were really the country all of a sudden began to realize this is going to hit us, and we really need to take it seriously. By the end of this month last year, we were starting to shut the country down, especially starting in Seattle, Washington, and then kind of spreading out throughout the country as every day we began to hear about cases popping up all across the nation. You know, I'm really curious from you, you know, because I remember the early debates you and I had about kids going back to school and about education. And I'm curious, have you changed your perspective on any of this at all in terms of how you view this now that we know what we know about COVID?
I don't even remember what I said back then.
You were strong for keeping kids in school, and were very much an advocate for that because you just felt like children needed playtime. They needed to be with other kids. They needed to, you know, have, you know, touch and play and experience things. So, you know, I was always like, close the schools. That was always my standard, close the schools. So
is that what I said? Okay, interesting.
I mean,
interesting.
You were also talking about the fact that the kids could be outside, they could be working in the ground. Of course, in the winter, like right now, we couldn't do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
in the winter, it's very different. In the winter, it's very different because, you know, having people indoors in close proximity to one another, and especially with the overcrowding of our schools, that's a very dangerous formula in terms of the, you know, disease spread. So, yeah, I mean, I think safety and health is number one, and it's not just for the students, it's also for those workers who keep the school going, the whole, you know, the building going, the teachers, the custodial staff, you know, all of the administrators and the other support staff in the schools. Their health is important. They are essential workers, and that's, you know, that's the thing that you know, we have to remember. And when we hear, you know, I was hearing, and I know we have to go to our break soon, but, you know, when we hear people talking about, oh, why is that for this federal relief bill, why are they wanting to, you know, the Republicans on the right were saying, why are they trying to include the $15 an hour minimum wage? That has nothing to do with the COVID relief. I'm like, yes, it does.
Yes, it does, yeah.
Because the workers who would be getting that are the essential workers. They're the ones who are underpaid and who are suffering the most in this economy right now. They need that raise. I mean, they need more than $15 an hour, in my opinion, because they've been talking about $15 an hour for over 10 years now. So, like, you know, it has to go up. But, you know, the essential workers are, and centering caring and good health for the people who take care of us in our society and keep things going. That is what's most important. Anyway, I'm about to get on a rant, but I know we have to go to our break and we have a guest up. So you are listening to Solutions on WURD. We'll be right back. On the other side of this break, we'll be continuing the conversation on education.
This Black Artist Story 365 vignette is brought to you by JD's Auto Body and Painting.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of iconic Black sci-fi. First of all, Black science fiction isn't some newfangled subgenre of sci-fi that came around when Marvel decided to finally put out Black Panther as a movie. Black sci-fi has been around since the beginning. And if we're honest, it started in the beginning when God said, "In the beginning was the Word," and it was good. But we'll contend with the beginning being West Africa, where the very first Black sci-fi authors used the oral tradition for publishing. We'll also contend that the Word, in this case, was stories our ancestral griots told about creation, metaphysics, and culture. Stories of jumping universes that they shared as poetry and song and dance around bright hot fires, powered by the rhythmic thundering of the drum. So who are some of the greats in Black sci-fi? Like in any genre, it depends on who you ask. I got 5 on it that Octavia Butler would likely top most folk top 5 in Black spec fiction because of her 90s Parable series, which included Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. Samuel R. Delany could be considered one of the OGs of the genre, and he taught at Temple University. Nalo Hopkinson is a renowned science fiction and fantasy writer, professor, and editor. Lest we forget Tanana Reeve Dew's The Good House, Black Rose, and Joplin's Ghost. Karen Lord's The Best of All Possible Worlds, N.K. Jemisin, The 100,000 Kingdoms, Stephen Barnes, Lion's Blood, Minister Faust, Nnedi Okorafor, Andrea Hairston, Jeffrey Thorne, Nisi Shaw, and Carl Hancock Rux. And of course, Tommy Adeyemi, Children of Blood and Bone. So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune in to The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
This Black Artist Story 365 vignette was brought to you by JD's Auto Body and Painting for all your auto body and detailing needs.
Ambition. You can't measure it, configure it, or bottle it up. But when you have it, you know it. It's that little voice in your head that says, you're not done. You want more. At WGU, we know all about ambition. We're a university that is rewriting the rules of higher education, making it more accessible, affordable, and student-focused than it's ever been. Because we know you won't rest until you reach your goals. Neither will we. WGU. Ambition never rests. Apply now at wgu.edu.
You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster. Hey, we just want to shout out some of the folk that have been listening to us tonight on Facebook Live. Say hey to Raphael, Bishop Dr. Peggy Kendrick, Jane Crosby, Ken Goodrich, Henny Miller, Kasuha, Kenrick, Joey, Tom Bryant. We got so many folk that are joining us. David Howe. So many people joining us tonight, and we're grateful for each of them. Malcolm White's out there. Cheryl Brown, that's listening in. Jane Cosby. I think I said Jane already. Cheryl, so we appreciate each and every one of you checking out our program and being here with us tonight. So we now have another guest with us, and we're grateful to have to welcome Rochelle Nichols-Solomon on to Solutions tonight. Rochelle is the chair of the School Advisory Commission over at the Powell School in Philadelphia. She's also the co-chair of the Education Strategy Team for Power Philadelphia. As a longtime Philadelphia resident, parent, grandparent here in the city. Rochelle, thanks for being on the show with us tonight.
Thank you, Bishop Royster. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So, Rochelle, you wear many hats in terms of what's happening, but you're deeply involved in what's happening with education here around the city of Philadelphia. And, I mean, we're going to get to power, but I'm really interested to hear, as the chair of the School Advisory Commission of Powell, what's the stance of the School Advisory Commission around reopening schools? Where's the administration at? Where are the students at? The families at? And how are you all handling this moment?
Thank you. I just want to start out by clarifying. Bishop Royster loves to give me promotions. I am the facilitator. I'm on the School Advisory Council at PAL and have been, and I, in that capacity, am the facilitator for the School Advisory Council. And before I get into that, I just want to give a context that I think everybody is really well aware of. Since this pandemic started, I started keeping a calendar in my kitchen and literally crossing off the days and noting the week because time was becoming one big blur. So I think everybody is painfully aware that we are now in our 11th month dealing with this pandemic and with our students not being in school in person. They're in school, but not in person. So this is week 47, and a lot has happened over that period of time. And one of the things I'll talk a little bit maybe later on about Power, but back in the summer, Power and in our capacity with our education justice team really started focusing in on this issue of reopening schools. So we're talking in June, July, talking about that, and really came up with a set of demands around that. And really our demands are around not only the issue of safety, but the issue of quality teaching and learning, right? So we want safe buildings to what end so that students and their teachers and others who serve them can be about the business of teaching and learning. And so that's just, background context. And I say that in part because now here we are, it is now February, and we're back at the same issue. So I think Groundhog Day was earlier in the week. I feel like we're in Groundhog Day. We just keep going back and forth. But I'll get to the point about PAL. So PAL is an elementary school, if folks don't know about it. It's a K-4 school, and it's actually a small school. It's a small school located in the Powelton community over by Powelton 36th Street. And one of the things I just want everybody to know, I think this is really important. PAL School is about to go into a brand spanking new building. So whenever students do go back to school, PAL students and teachers and community members and families and friends will be going into a brand new building. So many of the issues, people would say, this issue of safety doesn't impact us. But we believe, as the PAL community, as the PAL school community, that in the issues of equity. And so where PAL might be going into a brand new building, that's wonderful, but the majority of students in Philadelphia public schools are not going into new buildings and have many, many environmental issues to face. But I'll just tell you a little bit real quickly about what happened at PAL. So yesterday, there were 2 meetings, information meetings for parents and community members, one at 8 o'clock in the morning and a repeat of that meeting at 6 o'clock. And it was really an opportunity for the school staff to explain what was going on. Because I will say one thing in all of this is, despite, what's in the paper, despite the website, there is so much confusion. And if you are a parent or a caregiver, you don't know from one day to the next what's going on. So this was really, in part, an information meeting, and then it was a listening meeting to hear. One of the things I want to say about the information, though, was the way it was organized, because, again, I think that we tend to talk about this issue around the issue of safety. And that is certainly one critical aspect. So the reopening of schools deals with having facilities that are safe for our students and the adults that are in them, right? And so that's a huge issue. But there's also the issue of teaching and learning. And what does that look like in these buildings when we reopen schools? And there's the issue of social-emotional, right? What is happening both for the children as well as for the adults? So that was the framework for this presentation that the school faculty at Powell did for parents, and then opened it up to questions. And I just, one of the things that's great about Zoom is you get to chat. So I just want to real quickly share just firsthand some of the chats that were there. One comment, this is insanity. I mean, believe me, if you listen to the school nurse explaining what all has to happen around students being able to come back in the building and pre-screening and a health room and 6 feet and the mask and the this and the vaccinations and all those things, your head is ready to explode. So this is insanity. There was a question about how long the day will be for in-person schooling. So as people know, I want to maybe go back. What the district has proposed is to reopen in person, because we have to underscore it, in person. Students have been in school, but this is in person, and they're targeting specifically the students in the lower grades, so pre-K, K grade, kindergarten, first, second graders. That's the specific group of students that they're bringing back in. And so the question is, what does that day look like for the students who will be back in person? And a lot of this, there's a discussion about younger children and their needs and their need to be social. And I mean, again, agree with tons of that, but there are also some other issues. So as one, just as an example, one of the kindergarten teachers talked about when you're working with young children, you need to be able to put that hand on the shoulder, to work with them. And when students are online, albeit it is imperfect and it is a mess. I have 2 grandsons that are one in elementary and one just in middle school, and so firsthand understand how challenging that is. But young children, you're not talking to them through a math. You're not explaining words to a math, and so now that's going to look different. So real questions about what the day would look like. One of the things that everybody was surprised, students are going to, if they are back in the building, they will still be using their Chromebook, because the teachers are going to be working with the students who are in person as well as the students who are still virtual learning. So there's still that same issue of screen time. There was the issue of the quality, the air quality, and this whole business of the ventilation and the window fans. I mean, students, what was it, 20 degrees this week? Are we really talking about air blowing into classrooms? That won't be the case if students went back at Powell, we assume, because it's a new building, although we at Powell have not gotten our ventilation report either. And one of the things we don't have in our new building is Wi-Fi yet. It's spotty all over the building, and that's essential. But that's at a new building. At other buildings, this issue of putting in fans, are students really and teachers going to be bundled up with coats on and gloves and hats? I mean, just absolutely absurd. So questions about the air quality report. So there were lots and lots of concerns about this. And you asked about the stance. I think that there's a lot of, I would say that the general tone of those 2 meetings, and there were 80 people across those 2 meetings, so we were hearing a lot. As much as parents and caregivers and family members are desperate to have their children back in school, the sentiment is, A, the issue of health and safety, it's really a lot of uncertainty, the lack of transparency from the district. Nobody understands what's going on. And there is, and I heard this earlier, and you hear it as rephrased, there is a lack of trust and there is a lack of transparency. So people are worried about the health and safety. But people are also worried about teaching and learning. And they, in fact, are worried about the disruption. Because one of the things that could happen with this reopening schools is that you would have, there's a classroom. So my child's classroom, the teacher in that classroom has health, is compromised in terms of health, and therefore will not be able to be. And in fact, we have this with 2 of our kindergarten teachers. So are we going to swap out those kindergarten teachers and bring in a 4th grade teacher instead? So you're disrupting, after a half year of school, the relationships, albeit virtual, the relationships that have been in place. This could be enormously disruptive. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop, take a breath, is that there is tremendous amount of resources that are going into this reopening of schools. And one example is all the teachers, all the staff coming back into the buildings. I think there's something like 10 hours of professional development that they're going to have to do to prepare for this in-person schooling. I can't even do the math, but I'm sure it's millions of dollars that are going to go into that to prepare. We're going to stop something we're doing, and schools have had real challenges pivoting to this online learning, but they have improved over time. They have gotten better. It is not perfect. But now we're going to have to come up with another model of teaching, which is doing this instruction both for those that are physically in the school as well as those that are still at home. So there's all kinds of huge issues. No easy answer, but I would say that the stances would be in agreement with what we're hearing, delay. This is not the time. We don't know enough. We need standards. We need a plan, a real plan, a really well thought out plan to do this.
Mm-hmm. You know, and why not delay it until the weather is a little warmer, so that at least.
Why not delay it until teachers are vaccinated? If they have to, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions about why. What's the rationale? Why are we doing this? And, I hear it's good for children. I think we all have been around long enough. I would not say that's the first priority. And I'm not just laying that at the feet of the school district of Philadelphia where Dr. Haidt. Dr. Haidt is the leader of it. But I'm laying that to others. I want to know what's behind that this is so important. And you can't just tell me because we care about children. That is not something that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I guess, one of my concerns is thinking about this if a teacher winds up getting COVID from a child, and there are bad reactions for COVID for children as well, but, teachers, all different ages, experiences, health conditions, we then have to shut down classrooms or shut down a school. It could just be a consistent back and forth over and over again, and we're seeing this actually in the South in schools where they have not shut down and they've continued to try to do in-person education. So, Rochelle, I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit about where power is right now and what's the thinking and where are we going?
Yeah. I mean, again, when I say Groundhog Day, I literally pulled out we believe it's time for action from June, July. And at that time, power, we had a set of demands, and those demands were for safe schools and quality teaching and learning. I would say there's 6 of them. And I think all of them. The only one that I think is different now is we had a demand in there around making sure that students had the technology, that is the Chromebook. And there was also the issue of connectivity, which is still a problem, but less of a problem. And I think even this week there was an announcement about increasing the bandwidth for students. But with the exception of that, I think we can dust off these same demands and power will act on them. So it's like publicly addressing. A lot of this has to do with issues of transparency. So the demands then, and our justice team is now revisiting and restating these to activate around, and also to work in coalition with lots of groups, because there's lots of organizations out there. Power's a member of coalitions like Our City, Our Schools, just as I'm a member of the School Advisory Council, but we're members of other groups. Congregation members are members of other things. Our congregations have teachers. Our congregations have retired teachers. So there's a lot of reach there with people. Our congregation members are grandparents and parents of public school students. So lot to reach. But one around this issue of the buildings and making sure that they are safe and providing regular updates, right? I have not seen any report from the School District of Philadelphia that tells me school by school the status of where they are in terms of the issues, the problems that they were having with buildings, the toxic school buildings. I know that the district has a website, kind of clunky, and you can go on and you can pull up a report and you see the ventilation or some certification. We don't know who did that, what it means. I mean, we need some plain talk, and we need resources that would help us to understand better what it is. But if you go on the district website, there is a link. You can pull up a school. They list all the classrooms, and they give a number, a numerical number that says how many students can be in that space. And it goes from everything from 0 students, so based on this ventilation testing or whatever it is, 0 can be in there, to like you could have 15 kids here or you could have 20 kids here. It's very, very complicated. And I think this is complicated, but I think that there are professionals that can find a way to like make this transparent and so that we can understand. We asked about a detailed explanation of the plans and particularly to meet the needs of those students that were most challenged we were looking for. We asked for full transparency and regularly updated information for all stakeholders. I mean, why can't in the newspaper there be a regular, the same way you're doing COVID updates, why can't we have updates in terms of what's happening with our schools and our education system? There was the support for quality online teaching and learning by making a commitment to the training and ongoing support. So giving the supports and making sure the supports are in place. And then providing parents with options as well and tools and training those. So those were basically the 6 things. And I think, again, we'll revisit them in the context of where we are right now, and we'll mobilize and organize power and our congregation to engage around this issue.
Well, Rochelle, thank you. I appreciate it. We've actually run out of time on this segment, but we appreciate you calling in, and we want to be able to stay in touch with you about this over the next few months as we continue to wrestle with everything that's going on related to COVID-19 and our return to schools for our children. So we really appreciate you coming in with us tonight.
And we appreciate you providing the opportunity. Look forward. Take care.
All right. That was Rochelle Nichols-Solomon, who is the facilitator of the School Advisory Commission Council over at Powell School. She's also co-chair of the Education Committee for Power, Education Strategy Team for Power in Philadelphia. We're up on our last break. You are listening to Solutions on WURD with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster. We'll be right back.
Tune in Saturdays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. to hear Empire Capital and Consulting founder Mark Palmer's show titled Black Money, Black Power. This show centers around black money and how black power is derived from money. Tune in every Saturday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Black Money, Black Power. Hosted by Mark Palmer.
This WURD Wellness Vignette is brought to you by Premium Nutrition Meals.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Nature is all around us, and each tree supports our ability to breathe fresh, clean air. Let's think about this for a moment. When we take a walk in nature, we open our senses to appreciate the beautiful world around us and connect back to the earth. Taking a walk in nature can simply look like this. Number 1, stop for 5 minutes on your drive home and walk to the waterfront. Number 2, spend an hour this weekend walking a hiking trail nearby. Number 3, go for a 15-minute after dinner walk. Sometimes we think spending time in nature has to be an all-day experience. Yet, even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Taking a walk in nature is something we can all do to support our overall health. Go ahead, try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com.
This WURD Wellness Vignette was brought to you by Premium Nutrition Meals.
The WURD Radio Newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax-Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions on WURD with Amani Braxton and Dwayne Royster. Hey, WURD family, have you signed up for your 4WURD membership yet? Join the 4WURD family today for access to special events, exclusive digital content, WURD swag, VIP invitations, discounts in our printed newsletter, WordPress. WURD values your support. We dedicate ourselves to providing the best news coverage for our listeners every step of the way. Please visit www.wordradio.com/forward for more details. And, hey, when you go ahead and register, just let them know that you heard us on Solutions on WURD with Amani Braxton and Dwayne Royster. Let them know that you heard this information with us and that you're signing up because you were a part of our program. All right, I do see that we have a caller on the line, and we want to get to that. I think it's Ms. T from Overbrook.
Hello.
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 Hi. So I had a question. I don't know if you guys know, you probably do, but, yeah, there are a lot of concerns about the school opening. I have one grandchild that's left in the school district. He's in his last year, and he has been able to do his work virtually most of the time. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you all know that Dr. Height is on Saturday morning, WURD, from, I think, 10 till 11. And it seems like it should be a hookup there for this school or the teachers or whoever to voice their concerns. I'm wondering if that's a possibility.
Yes, actually, I've heard that Dr. Height is on and periodically. So, yeah, I think that it should be. I can't say for the show and who produces that, who does what with it.
Well, there's Cody Anderson helping him. That's one reason why I've had a membership with WURD ever since they began. Mm-hmm. So I don't call often, but I'm wondering why that wasn't, something like that wasn't thought of.
I can't answer that question. We only are responsible for our show, so I apologize on that.
But I think that he's on every other week on Saturday morning, so people can tune in and express your concerns or questions, direct them to him when he is on. But I think what Ms. T is speaking to is, and this is what I was thinking about when we were listening to Rochelle, is that, there is a crisis of trust in the public school district for whatever reasons. There's historical reasons. I'm not putting it all at the feet of Dr. Height. There are a lot of historical reasons, but that has to be addressed in order to do any kind of reopening process that people can have confidence in. I think that's part of the big issue here. We have Lola in Jenkintown.
Yes, hi. Good evening. Thank you for taking my call. Enjoy listening to you both. So I just wanted to say that I am truly disgusted because all of this is like, if anybody, anybody's been married or somebody's been through a divorce and everybody's fighting over something else and nobody's worrying about the kids. And I live a little, outside. One of the reasons we moved was because of the school district and because of how high the private schools was, even though my sons had applied for different schools, Friends and stuff like, not Friends, I forget the other school, that lost my train of thought. But he applied for the Masterman, and he was on a waiting list for over a year. So we decided to just, move out and get a better education for them. But the kids in Philadelphia are suffering. And I understand what that lady was saying, and she was talking a mile a minute. However, the children are lost in this as if they were going through a divorce, and no one is caring about them. And it's very disheartening. It's very discouraging, and I hurt for them. We have kids out here who are being abused, who are in abusive homes, who, usually they would be in school for 6-7 hours. Some would be, have after-school programs. They would do different things that would keep them from home. They have spotty, the web, the Wi-Fi. Some kids, they had a report on 60 Minutes. They had something on C-SPAN where some kids have not been in school learning on this internet thing remotely since we've been on COVID. And my thing to them is, if anybody is listening, Height or that lady or anybody, and I know this might not sound good or anything, but get it together. These kids are hurting. So when they come back, then they're going to be 2 years behind. Who's caring about our black kids? Because I'm going to tell you something. Up here and other districts that I know about, and my other friends that live in Maryland and all of these other nice areas, their kids are learning. Our kids are learning. They come and talk to the kids. They come and stand outside the door. They stand in the middle of the street. They do everything. And the school district has failed our kids for the last 50, 60 years, and now they're even failing them even more. And I don't mean to be all upset about it, but when we're thinking about our future, think about this. 10, 15, 20 years from now, where are these kids going to be at? How are they going to get these 2 years back? And they need to get on the ball and do something. The schools weren't together before. And now we're going to say we can't, the kids can't do this, the kids can't do that. Our kids are suffering. They are in hell, mental illness, everything. Do we really think that when they come out of this that they're going to be okay? Well, think again.
Hey, Lola, I want to ask you, what would you do in this circumstance?
Hello? Oh, what would I do in this circumstance? Well,
how would you handle it?
We've had what? I've been working remotely, so they've had about a year. So I would say to Height that he should have been on the ball about getting these schools together. You can't wait till the last minute and say, I want kids to come back. No, I'm not saying that they should just go back in and the schools aren't safe. But what I'm saying is, if he's at the helm, why can't they get the people in there for over a year, 13 months now, whatever? Get the schools together. Go in there and clean the schools. Make sure that, I don't know about this vaccination thing about the teachers, but everybody's going to Walmart. Everybody's going to restaurants. Everybody's going everywhere else with the plexiglass. I see the kids out everywhere with their masks on playing in the stores, and we can't teach our kids? Stop it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you giving us a call.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lola.
All right.
Let's go to Ann in North Philly.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Like I heard one of the ladies say about Dr. Height. He is on WURD, and it's every other week. Mm-hmm. And they're not taking questions because they say then it becomes a conflict. Because you start to argue, you don't really get what good points that he might have to give out. School will not open Monday. I already heard that. No matter what you say, they're now opening the schools Mondays. So a lot of parents probably looking forward to it. The school won't be open because and these fans, all these fans that they buying, someone asked is there a fan for the school, and the answer was they didn't think so. And it was asked at one school saying, well, where are you going to put a fan at? Mm-hmm. We don't agree with it, but where are you going to put it at? And the building engineer said, we're going to put it up there on top of the window. And they said, well, what? They're going to tear the top of the window out, put the fan in there. They said, okay, if you do that, the cord is short. So what you going to do? Run stiffening cord all around till you try to find an outlet?
Yes,
yes. This happened. The parents, some of them now they're in this uproar because of this COVID-19, and they're sick and tired of these children being home. So now they just ready to throw them on out there. When you should have been more interested, from the beginning. And
right.
And it's never too late now. It's never too late.
Thank you, Ann. We have to stop you there just because we're running up on the end of the show. But I appreciate your point. You know, these are complicated issues that there should have been a lot longer term planning on how to reopen in a safe way that builds confidence in the public, that lets people know that, and the teachers know, and all the staff know that they can be safe. And that has not been what has happened. So we appreciate you. We appreciate your call and comments. And we appreciate everybody who's called in tonight to add your 2 cents to the conversation. We mainly were focusing on education tonight. And we thank State Rep Chris Rabb, and we thank Rochelle Nichols-Solomon as well for being our guests. And I thank you, Bishop, for, we had a technical problems in the beginning, but we worked it out, and I appreciate you always for being a partner in this process here on this show. And we thank you, Troy, for handling our direction and engineering of the show. As always, we really appreciate you. Coming up next is the Envy McKee Show, so stay tuned for her. Always something interesting and exciting on Envy's show. And we invite you to join us in going out and changing the damn world. We'll see you next week. Peace.
We do it all for the love, y'all.